Hi everybody, my name is Christopher Hamilton. I'm going to talk about viewer-centric design for esports and interactive gaming. The light's pretty poor in here, so I'm going to turn off my webcam and move forward with the presentation. Just a quick overview, a little bit about myself and Genvid Technologies, massive interactive live events, and design thinking for interactive streams. So I've been in the industry for about 13 years, and here are some companies that I've worked for across the top. I'm an American, but I lived in St. Petersburg, Russia for a number of years, and now I'm based in Helsinki, Finland. Most of my roles have been in production and partner relations, and I got a lot of live ops experience while working at Rovio. I feel very strongly about giving back to the community, and I've worked with a variety of organizations. I'm currently on the board of the IGDA and the Finnish Game Jam, and I'm working with the UNEP on a project called Playing for the Planet. So if anybody's interested in any of these initiatives, do feel free to talk to me afterwards. Genvid Technologies was founded in 2016 by some Square Enix veterans. It is a US-based startup with offices in New York, Montreal, LA, Tokyo, and Berlin. The company is backed by some leading game VCs like Galaxy Interactive and Makers Fund. Here's our team of awesome nerds. These are highly talented folks who are a lot of fun to work with, and many have worked at Blizzard, Riot, Square Enix, and Ubisoft, and have experience in esports. Here's an early slide of the company's vision, looking at Experience 1.0, which was just a single player arcade or console. 2.0 was the multiplayer experience, but this Experience 3.0 is massively participatory and available on a wide range of devices. And Experience 3.0 is about live ops and shared experiences. It's massive interactive live events or miles. Fortnite is organizing massive online events like DJ Marshmallow's performance last February, and more recently, the Party Royale. When Epic founder Tim Sweeney was in Helsinki last year, he spoke about how players met in Fortnite not only to play, but to chat with one another, to watch other players, and to have a shared experience. And so here are games building experience that appeal to not just core gamers, but a wide audience, and just being attractive to everyone. And this is also true for non-gaming events trying to become more interactive. May 1st in Finland is basically a cross between Labor Day and a celebration of spring. Traditionally, people are out having picnics or celebrating in town, and we couldn't do that this year. But a local VR company made an online May Day concert experience that was broadcast on YouTube. I was in Hangouts for work when this happened, but I started dropping out of the call and had to keep joining. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I've never experienced anything like this in Finland before. And then I found out about this event and I learned that 12.5% of the entire country were watching this event. The more interesting thing for me is that 150,000 of these viewers were actually interacting with the live stream, creating avatars and having fun on it. And it's interesting to note this deliberately was not broadcast on TV because they wanted that interactivity. And that's basically our key thesis. Games and traditional media are at a point of convergence, or an ongoing evolution of convergence, maybe, as media is becoming more engaging like games, and games are addressing a wider audience, reaching out to spectators and creating non-gaming experiences and interactions for them, just to capture those eyeballs. Experience 3.0 is now, and game developers should be thinking about this ongoing shift in paradigm and the new forms of gameplay that players and viewers can have together, and I'll touch on that later with the demos. Historically, game developers have been focused on the players. They create amazing gaming experiences and they know how to monetize them. But now with a variety of services like Twitch, broadcasting games and esports, viewership's rapidly growing, and yet it remains an underserved market. Twitch had its best quarter ever in the first quarter of 2020, both in regards to hours watched and viewer counts on the platform. In terms of hours watched, Twitch jumped from 2.3 million to 3.1 million viewers between fourth quarter 2019 and first quarter 2020. The average viewer count went from 1.2 million at the end of 2019 to 1.4 million in February, and then 2.5 million in April. Now, clearly, the ongoing global pandemic caused a spike in viewership, but there was a significant growth well before COVID-19. So why are viewers underserved? Because most streaming experiences look something like this. Streamers broadcast only from the player's perspective, and if I don't play that game, I usually just don't have an idea of what's going on. Therefore, it's not particularly engaging. It's important to note that game developers and not streamers are in the best position to address viewership of their games. Game developers have the ability to put in new camera angles, create interactive experiences, and address viewers. Professional sports are a spectator-driven business, and game developers should start thinking about building spectator-centric value in order to tap into this audience. Now, as game developers, we need to start thinking about what that viewer experience is going to be on a genre-by-genre basis. And it's not necessarily the same as the real-world counterpart. If you're watching a fighting game, it's really not like the people that are normally watching boxing or MMA are going to be watching that fighting game. And in many ways, it's a different genre altogether. Fighting games are fast-paced and tactical. Boxing is sort of slow and more strategic. So fighting games are more like badminton. Replays, different camera angles tend to be very important. MOBAs, action, first-person shooters tend to be more like American football. They are team-oriented with trick plays and coordinated moves. Collectible card games, we have a good real-world example here. It's called the World Series of Poker. Real-time statistics, deck information, these are the things that are really important. MMOs, we like to think of as golf. There's a long narrative. There's a story that's both in-game and out-of-game. It's sort of a mental thing. Here's a golfer. He has a chance to make this putt and take the lead, but he totally botched this hole 2 years ago. Let's watch that replay and let's see if he has the mental strength to overcome that this time. Likewise, you could have two guilds that show down in the MMO. There was huge carnage, but let's see where they are today. Two different teams, two armadas. Did they bring the same types of ships, or did they completely change their strategy? There is a long-form narrative that can be had here. But ultimately, it's important to think of the story that you want to tell the audience, because that may shape the data that you want to expose and make available to them. So how can viewers interact with games? On the left here, you've got a bird's eye camera. You got different camera angles and maps that can be toggled on and off to provide viewers with a big picture, or maybe create more of a in-stadium type feeling. Likewise, data can be displayed, and it's very common with sports broadcasting where you pull up different tables and leaderboards and this sort of thing. Jumping to the middle, we live in a world of live ops and constantly evolving gameplay, so it's important to tell viewers what's going on. And this is also potentially useful for player re-engagement. If I'm watching an RPG game and I notice that ogres have a 1.8 buff for this weekend event, and I've got a powerful ogre from when I was playing several months before, I might be inclined to jump into the game and see what my ogre can do. Finally, to the right, viewer interactions that can actually affect gameplay by providing the player with health or setting traps to impede them. So there are three types of streaming interactivity. There's an informational tier, which is just displaying real-time data that informs and educates both novices and experts alike. A customizable tier that lets viewers select from different camera angles and just create more of a personalized experience. And then the influential tier, where it could be either passive, where I can cheer for a player, or active, where I can help or hurt the player with the input on the stream. So how difficult is this, and what sort of development is required to implement it? Informational is easy. It's just exposing data and putting it into a web overlay. Customizable takes more time to figure out exactly what you want to expose. If you want to put in optimal camera angles, this can be tricky for some developers if they have sort of cut on development time by not creating a full world, but only putting the art available where the players can see it. So if you want to put a camera that exposes some of that area where the player wasn't going and wasn't actually drawn out, that's a bit of a heavy lift. But some developers have gone ahead and done that just so that they could have some optimal camera angles put in. Not recreating the whole world, but at least creating the world where the cameras can see it. Obviously, influential is the hardest. It takes a lot of time to figure out player balance because you don't want to disenfranchise the actual players by getting pounded by a bunch of viewers. At the same time, you also need to figure out viewer inputs and how those viewer inputs will affect the game. Obviously, monetization is key. Both informational and customizable tiers can be behind a paywall. They can be paid for by a sponsor or monetized through ads. The influential tier Also opens up possibilities of microtransactions. This concludes the design thinking required to create more viewer-centric streams and how to turn viewers into active participants. I'll continue now by demoing some games that have made some of these integrations. So this is Counter-Strike Global Offense by Valve. CSGO is a 5-on-5 team-based multiplayer first-person shooter. The game pits terrorists against counter-terrorists while players also try to complete various objectives. Genvid powered the last 3 Counter-Strike majors and partnered with Stats Helix and Faceit to create Command Center, which is a premium product that is available during big tournaments. Command Center itself, which unfortunately I can't demo because there isn't a tournament happening right now, but you also have the option of selecting from any of the different player views, so you have basically 10 cameras to choose from. At the same time, you can see here that you've got players 5 on the left, 5 on the right. This is an informational level that appears on top of everything. It provides information like active weapon. You can call up this player card, which gives you an idea of various statistics that the players have, and it's all in real time. While that's informational, there are a number of things that are customizable, and here you can see that you can enable or disable things like cheering. There are a number of things at the hub that can be changed. There are things like the crosshair that defaults to white, but we can say change that to red. There's just a number of things that viewers can modify and change to how they want. You can see here how the crosshair is red. There's a scoreboard that you can pull up at any time. Normally, if you're watching a tournament, you have to wait for the shoutcasters to call these things out and let you know who's winning. This I can pull up anytime I want to. There's also a mini-map, and the mini-map gives us this sort of amazing bird's eye view of what's going on in the game. And again, this also helps us recreate that stadium feeling. So now I'm watching the game. I get more information than I would when I'm just watching from the player's perspective. I can see all these different players, what team they're on, what direction they're facing in, what weapon they have active. I can select a player like Kurt here. Kurt's player card now ends up in the upper left-hand corner. And like on the player card, there also is this clap button. When I clap for Kurt, I'm cheering for him. And you can see Kurt in the upper right-hand corner here. He has these red circles going around him. And shoutcasters can see that. They can call it out. You can see there's a slight halo around him. If we clap for him, that halo will get bigger. That means basically the default camera view for everybody that doesn't have the premium package, the default camera view would likely default to Kurt's view. I mentioned that there's a premium clap here. Premium claps can be bought from Twitch, through Twitch for bits, and this again is another way to monetize the viewers. So again, this is a much more optimized way to watch Counter-Strike tournaments, and something that we're very proud of. So that's Counter-Strike. So this is a Space Sweeper by Kengo Nakajima. He's based in Tokyo. It is a top-down twin-stick MMO shooter, and here players work to sort of clear up the planet, collect resources, build structures to defend themselves, and then use weapons to fend off against a number of enemies. You can already see that a number of players are dying, and a couple more will die as I go through this demo. Here you can see there's a research new technology area here. There's some fortresses kind of around. It's a rather complex game, and it's actually kind of a stressful bullet hell game for the players that are playing. Nakajima-san didn't want to take the CSGO approach of trying to make things more understandable to the viewers, but rather engage them in a different way. And he does that by creating these little purple spirals, these anger points. If I mouse over them, I'm getting anger points. What they are, when a player kills an NPC, that little purple vortex represents the dead soul of the NPC. With the anger points, however, I can now go to this store, this inventory of things, and I can deploy things that are useful to the player, resources or weapons or this sort of thing, actually into the game. So if I select a couple of these soil debris elements, we'll see what happens. There's a design hack here since we're dealing with a little bit of latency. The resources will be delivered by drones that will come in from outside of the screen, and you'll see viewer 484. Here they come in now. So viewer 484, they're dropping my soil debris resources into the game. So the players can actually see the viewers that are actually supporting them in their effort. It's from a design perspective, I find this game fascinating because you've got a very stressful game. You've got four players that are all competing against each other. Um, and then as a viewer, I'm having this very casual experience collecting all of these elements. This is a special version that was done for the Tokyo Game Show last fall. The original version was basically just one player, and the inventory, the store here had things that were both good for the player, like the resources now, and ultimately bad for the player, like a swarm of bees and other sort of bad things that could be deployed against the player. Um, but here you had four players competing against each other at the Tokyo Game Show, and then you had 20 streamers that were all collaboratively working with one another, collecting all the resources, calling out like, "Hey, player number three needs more resources," and it was just interesting to see the dichotomy between the players and the viewers, as well as the interplay that you have developed here. So, Space Sweeper by Kengo Nakajima. This is Retroit by Black Block. It is a Helsinki developer indie team. The game is a mobile-first MMO that was developed in the Godot engine. And it's interesting, they just have this idea of being Grand Theft Auto, but just the cars. The first thing I want to do is toggle off the overlay here. And this just gives you an idea of what the world looks like and what the game would look like on a mobile phone. And then putting it on, we can begin to look at some of the interactions that they've created. So first, you get a traffic map that shows you all the different players skidding around town and what various types of vehicles they're driving. Then they installed a number of cameras that allow us to look at things closer up. You'll note the timer. This is actually showing us the latency. So this gives the viewers an idea of when those changes are going to happen. So the first thing I'll do is I'll drop in this pinata. Anything that hits the pinata will basically cause the pinata to explode. This is just a fun aspect of how viewers can drop things in and interact, have a light touch with some of the players. We can also drop a soccer ball in, and the soccer ball is something that cars can kick around town and just have fun with. Perhaps the more engaging and interesting thing that can be deployed in the game is this cash truck. Because not only can we follow the cash truck around town and begin to check out some of the amazing art that the developers put in, but this is an element that attracts players because when players actually hit the truck, they earn money and that helps them level up their game. Again, you can see some of the satirical ads that have been placed in town and some of the amazing sort of graffiti that the artists have put in. The developers clearly had a lot of fun, and it'll be really interesting to see how this game continues under development. Again, here we can jump at the Skycam, and this is just yet another bird's eye view that tracks across town and gives us more interesting camera angles. So this is Demolition Robots KK by Throw the Warped Code Out. This is a four-player competitive robot action game. Players take control of these giant robots and destroy buildings in the city to earn money. And the objective is to have the most money when time expires. You can see my house here. When I tap on that, I can see the other Twitch residents that are living in my house. All of these buildings have various Twitch viewers watching them. I might know Connor here, and we might have a competition amongst ourselves to see if we can get the robots to destroy each other's houses, or if my house will last longer than his house. This is an informational tier integration. I can select the robot. You can see it's in the crosshairs now, and I can drop a trap on him by hitting the trap button. Again, counting down to show latency, and my name is going to come down, and maybe I managed to catch the robot, and he'll be frozen for a couple seconds. It doesn't look like that was particularly effective. I can also vote for the robot using the thumbs up button, and when I cheer for that robot enough, they'll get the blue sort of halo and they will go into this powered up mode trying to destroy things, just having a greater power. And both of these are obviously influential tier integrations. Um, this game is interesting. It was developed in Unity, and the target platform is the Nintendo Switch. So this is Demolition Robots KK if I throw the warped goat out. This is In the Black by Impeller Studios. This is a competitive space combat sim from the designers of Crysis and X-Wing, and they really wanted to focus on realism. So they have Newtonian physics here in spaceflight, and they've set the game within our own solar system. This is a 4 versus 4 multiplayer game. You've got a layout very similar to CSGO. By selecting a player card, I can pull up this like button on the side. And I also get this information where I can pull up telemetry or movement information, armaments to show me what sort of weapons the player has, and then a info card here that shows me some additional information. Now here's the interesting twist. All of this is basically informational or customized tier integrations. I can add a bounty on this particular player, and while this is not an influential tier integration, this is a behavior, or this is something that I can do that will actually affect the behavior of other players. Now that there's a really high bounty on this particular player, they were more likely to go after him specifically to claim the cash prize. Just another interesting twist to the integration. Again, this is In the Black by Impeller Studios. So this is Project Glucis by Pipeworks Studios in Oregon. This is a very interesting game. They decided that they wanted to make a game that had a number of characters, but all of these characters are AI, so it's actually a zero-player game. Everybody that's watching on the stream, though, can influence what happens to these characters, so it is in many ways like an ant farm. I can kind of shake things up, and I can shake things up by basically dropping things into the game. We'll jump to a different camera view. Again, you see the counter that shows that we're going to a different camera angle. Here we go. We've got Saeed here, Claire here, and we can do something to determine which one of these two players is the last to go with here. As we choose Saeed or Claire here, we get an idea. Each of these characters, they have backgrounds, they have statuses, injuries, social profiles, biographies of who they are and what they've been doing, needs and goals, and this person's goal is, ooh, this person now wants to kill. Well, that can be kind of scary. What we can do, and let's go to a different camera angle, drop zone A. Not quite sure where drop zone A is. Is anybody? Claire is close by here. We can drop something into drop zone A. So we're the viewing drop zone A with the camera, and here's drop zone A on the map. We can activate a drone. Now all the viewers get to sort of vote for what they want to see happen, or what they want to see deployed in the drone. I'm tapping on this Judas goat because it's a goat that basically has a mine attached to it. You can see this little siren going off. Ooh, Saeed's on his way, and here comes the drone. And that he's going to go after Saeed, and Saeed's basically toast. Boom. Claire ultimately here is the winner. And this game is going to restart. Just one of the things I wanted to point out here is so many things in games are randomly determined. It could be loot or something like this. Here are 12 different items that could be placed in your loot box, or in this case, a drone. And this has been outsourced to the community. This is outsourced to everybody that's viewing everything. So if you have something that's randomly determined in a game, that randomness can be outsourced to the community. It's a way to give the viewers agency. And again, here's everybody alive again as the game cycles through everything. Again, Project Ulysses by Pipeworks, studio based in Oregon. So that wraps up the demos. I hope you found some inspiration in a lot of the features that these other developers have used, and you will begin to think about how your games might be able to address viewership and the interplay between players and viewers. It's still very early days, but there is a potential for interactive streaming to disrupt video. It's one that we find very intriguing and interesting. Again, we feel that developers are in the best position to address viewership because they can control cameras and they can actually make these integrations. So thank you for listening. Please, if I don't manage to address everybody's questions, feel free to reach out to me by email. My email address is here, chamilton@genvidtech.com. If you go to the website, you can download the SDK, and the SDK includes, for Unity users, there's a tank sample that allow you to kind of play around with the technology. So if anybody wants to tinker around with this, visit the website, download the SDK. Again, thank you.
Chris, thanks a lot for this beautiful talk. This solution is just amazing. I think it's kind of a revolution thing for streaming, you know. I remember the previous cases from Alex Nichu project for Tiny Build when you promote Punch Club with these things, but you had to type comments in the chat and then you can influence on streaming process. And with your solution, you need just click on things. I think it's much easier, the next step. So we have time for a couple of questions. The one would be in English, and the second one, a special surprise for Russian-speaking viewers. So yeah, the first one, how often do you stream your game, you know, for marketing perspective? What do you think on this?
I think it really depends on the approach that any developer wants to take. So there's no one good solution for anybody. But the fact that these games are interactive, it means you can leave a stream running 24/7 and it becomes a jump in, jump out experience. You know, games are online and games are constantly evolving. So this is another way that you can promote online events, and you can have special online events where viewers could actually impact more. So that might be something that could bring a peak audience in, and developers may want to shake up what's happening on their stream just by broadcasting sort of live talks with the developers and giving updates on what's coming next. So I think there are lots of things you could do with the stream.
Thanks. And the next question would be in Russian, because we all know that your Russian is perfect, even more perfect than mine.
Я совсем все забыл.
Да, отлично. Слушай, мы с тобой встречались как минимум в 10 разных странах. Ты большой фанат конференций, ты активно продвигал, в том числе, ваши решения на конференциях. Сейчас, когда все перешло в онлайн, как ты себя чувствуешь, как ты используешь онлайн-инструменты, такие как DevGAMM?
DevGAMM и вообще это Pine-портал как инструмент очень нравится, на самом деле классно сделано, как тоже White Knights Hub тоже очень классно все сделали. Всегда рад просто найти новых людей, искать девелоперы, и главное это найти время с ними пить пиво онлайн, онлайновом режиме.
Да, это очень важно. Спасибо тебе большое за выступление, за ответы на вопросы. Друзья, если у кого-то есть еще что-то спросить у Криса, вы можете это сделать на английском и спойлер на русском. Теперь вы тоже знаете, что Крис превосходно будет по-русски. Пишите ему в приват. Спасибо тебе большое, Крис, и отличного тебе дня.
Пока-пока.